All right, buckle up for this one, because today we are diving head first into Nigeria's People's Democratic Party.
The PDP.
The PDP.
Yep.
And, well, we've got a whole bunch of sources about some pretty explosive accusations coming from River State Governor Nyesom Wike.
Oh, yeah. He is not holding back.
Not at all when it comes to his own party members.
And this is a big deal, right? Because the PDP used to be the top dog in Nigerian politics, but these days they're struggling to get back on their feet as the opposition party.
For sure.
So all this drama, Wike's stirring up these claims about infighting and people just not focusing on what matters. You know, that could really hurt their chances.
It really could. And one of the things that I found really interesting is how Wike zeroed in on Bala Muhammad.
Right, the PDP Governors Forum chairman.
Exactly. And Wike saying that Muhammad taking over this role, which, by the way, used to be held by a governor from the South, has basically just weakened the party.
Yeah. You can't talk about Nigerian politics without talking about the whole North-South divide. It's a constant source of tension. And, you know, within the PDP, this shift in the chairmanship from South to North, well, some people might see that as a straight-up power grab.
Yeah.
And that just adds fuel to Wike's fire when he says that ambition is winning out over unity.
And it's not even just about the move itself. It's what Wike sees as the reason behind it.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Wike's using some pretty strong language.
Yeah.
He's calling out Muhammad for what he calls infantile ambition.
Okay.
And says that Muhammad just wants to be a leader in name only.
Now, that raises a really important point about leadership and what it actually means to be effective.
Yeah.
Especially when you're leading a political party that's trying to claw its way back into power.
Right.
I mean, is it just about having the title, or is it about actually doing something that helps the party reach its goals?
Well, Wike seems to think it's the latter.
Yeah.
He's all about action, not just words.
Right.
In fact, one of the things he said was, leadership is not by mouth, it's by action.
And he links that directly to the whole question of money. Yeah, exactly. Like, if the PDP leaders were really serious about getting back in charge, then they'd be putting their money where their mouth is. They'd be actively funding the party.
He even went so far as to say that there are no big spenders in the party anymore, which feels like a pretty clear dig at some of his colleagues.
Oh, for sure.
So what do you make of that statement? I mean, is he genuinely worried about the party's finances, or is there something else going on?
You know, I think it's probably a bit of both.
Yeah.
On the one hand, he's highlighting a very real issue for political parties in Nigeria. Campaigning takes money.
Yeah.
You need resources to organize, to spread your message, to get people out to vote.
Especially in a country as big and as complex as Nigeria.
Right. And without enough funding, it's incredibly difficult to compete with the ruling party.
So this lack of funding could be a real problem for the PDP.
Oh, absolutely. But on the other hand, we can't ignore the strategic side of Wike's statement. By publicly calling out the lack of big spenders, he's putting pressure on his fellow party members, especially the ones with deep pockets, to step up and contribute.
It's almost like he's using public criticism as a fundraising tactic.
Exactly. It's a bold move.
It is.
And it remains to be seen if it'll actually work.
Right. Will it actually get those with the money to open up their wallets and support the party, or will it just create more resentment and division?
It's a gamble for sure.
It is, but it definitely says a lot about Wike's style.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to shake things up and call people out.
No, he is not.
Even if it ruffles some feathers.
Yeah, and this ties into his broader criticism of how the PDP is organized and their whole strategy.
Yeah.
He brings up the upcoming Uno state election as a prime example of where they're failing.
Oh, right. He said there's just no organization for PDP to win in Uno State.
That's a pretty bleak assessment. So why is Uno State so important in all of this?
Well, for one thing, it's seen as a kind of a bellwether state.
Yeah.
You know how it goes. There could be a sign of what's to come nationally, and it could influence both the PDP's and the ruling party strategies going forward.
So the stakes are pretty high for them in Uno State.
Definitely. And Wike's pessimism about their chances there suggests that he's worried about the party's overall direction.
Yeah, if they can't even get organized to win in a place like Uno, what hope do they have on a national level, right?
It makes you wonder if Wike's just venting his frustrations or if he's actually trying to send a message to the PDP leadership.
You know, it's probably a bit of both.
Yeah.
He's clearly frustrated, but he's also trying to get a reaction to force the PDP to face its weaknesses and make some changes.
And here's where things get really interesting.
Oh, how so?
Despite all this harsh criticism of the party and its leaders, Wike says he actually has a close personal relationship with Muhammad.
That seems a little contradictory, doesn't it?
It does, but it actually points to something unique about Nigerian politics.
What's that?
Personal relationships and strategic maneuvering often go hand in hand. It's not unusual for politicians to have strong disagreements while still maintaining personal ties.
So it's not necessarily all-out war between Wike and Mohammed.
Not necessarily. There's more to it than meets the eye. You know, Wike might be critical of Mohammed's leadership, but he also acknowledges their personal connection.
Right. It's a reminder that in politics, things are rarely black and white.
Exactly. It adds a whole other layer to this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about policy differences. We're seeing personalities, ambitions, and long-standing relationships all mixed together.
And that's what makes this so fascinating to unpack.
Absolutely. So Wike's accusations have thrown a wrench into the PDP's plans. He's essentially arguing that their current approach with Mohammed leading the way and this lack of financial commitment from key players is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, he's saying they messed up by prioritizing ambition over unity and that this could cost them big time in the upcoming elections, starting with Uno State.
Okay, so let's break this down a bit further. We know that Wike's raising some serious concerns about the PDP's leadership, their finances, their whole strategy.
Right.
But what does it all mean? What are the implications? Where does the PDP go from here?
Now, that's the million-dollar question. Will they listen to Wike and try to change course, or will they just dismiss him as a disgruntled outsider?
Yeah.
The next few weeks are going to be crucial for the party's future.
I can't wait to see how it all plays out.
Me neither. This is Nigerian politics at its best.
We're going to take a quick break here, but stick around. When we come back, we'll explore some of the potential scenarios that could unfold and what this all means for the future of the PDP and for Nigerian politics as a whole.
One of the things that really strikes me about all of this is how Wike's criticism goes beyond just, personality clashes or power struggles.
Right.
It gets at a much deeper issue in Nigerian politics, Money.
You're talking about his comments about the lack of big spenders in the PDP.
Exactly. Remember when he said, leadership is not by mouth, it's by action. Well, in this case, the action he's talking about is financial. He's saying, if the PDP wants to be a serious contender, its leaders need to be willing to invest in the party.
Which makes sense. I mean, campaigning costs money.
It does.
You need resources to organize, to get your message out, to mobilize voters, especially in a country as big and complex as Nigeria.
Absolutely. And that's where this lack of funding could really hurt the PDP. It could make it much harder for them to run effective campaigns to connect with voters and to actually challenge the ruling party.
But is it really just about the PDP needing to raise more money? Could there be something else going on? Why would potential donors be hesitant to support the party?
That's a great question, and I think there are a few possible explanations. One possibility is that some donors are looking at the PDP's internal divisions and thinking, is this really a good investment?
Right.
If the party isn't united, if there are doubts about its leadership and direction, well, donors might be less likely to open their wallets.
So Wike's criticisms, even if they're well-intentioned, could actually be hurting the PDP's fundraising efforts.
It's definitely a possibility. It's almost like a catch-22. The lack of unity makes it harder to raise funds, and the lack of funds further weakens the party's ability to present a united front.
It's a vicious cycle.
Exactly. And this is where Wike's focus on the Uno State election gets even more interesting. Remember, he said he doesn't see any organization for PDP to win there.
Right. And you explained earlier that Uno State is considered a bellwether state.
Uh-huh.
So the outcome there could have national implications.
Precisely. And Wike seems to be suggesting that the lack of funding combined with the internal divisions within the PDP will make it extremely difficult for them to win in Uno State, which, if true, would be a major setback for the party's national ambitions.
It almost sounds like he's trying to shock the PDP into action. Like, wake up, guys, we're headed for a disaster if we don't get our act together.
I think you're right. It's a very public way of raising the alarm, and it's a tactic that comes with its own risks.
How so?
Well, on the one hand, it could be just what the PDP needs, a strong voice from within, forcing them to confront their weaknesses. But on the other hand, it could backfire. It could further alienate some party members, deepen the divisions, and make it even harder to find common ground.
So it's a gamble, and only time will tell whether it pays off.
Exactly. We'll have to wait and see how the PDP leadership responds to Wike's challenge. Do they double down on their current approach, or do they take his criticisms to heart and make some changes?
It's a pivotal moment for them. The decisions they make now will have a huge impact on their future prospects.
And not just for the PDP, but potentially for Nigerian politics as a whole. If the PDP, as the main opposition party, can't get its house in order, it could have implications for the balance of power, for the democratic process, for the very future of the country.
So what we're seeing here is much bigger than just a personal dispute between Wike and his fellow party members.
Absolutely. It's about leadership, about strategy, about the role of money in politics, and ultimately about the challenges of building a strong and effective opposition in a complex democracy.
There's a lot at stake here.
There is, and that's what makes this whole situation so fascinating to observe. It's a real-life political drama unfolding before our eyes with all the intrigue, the power plays, and the unpredictable twists and turns.
And the main character, Nyesom Wike, is certainly not one to shy away from the spotlight.
He's a force to be reckoned with, a skilled politician with a sharp tongue and a knack for stirring things up. Whether you agree with his methods or not, you can't deny that he's made a significant impact on the political landscape.
He's definitely shaken things up within the PDP, but the question remains, will his actions lead to meaningful change, or will they just create more chaos and division?
That's what we're all waiting to see, and it's a question that might take some time to answer.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground so far. We've explored Wike's accusations, delved into the potential reasons behind the PDP's financial struggles, and analyzed the high stakes of the UNO state election. But there's still one big question looming. What are the potential scenarios that could play out from here?
That's a great point. We've focused on the problems, but now it's time to consider the possibilities. What are the potential outcomes of this whole saga, and what might they mean for the PDP, for Wike, and for Nigeria?
All right, let's dive into that. So where do you see this all heading? What are some of the potential scenarios that could play out?
Well, one possibility is that Wike's criticisms actually have the opposite effect. Instead of pushing people away, they could actually light a fire under the PDP.
Okay.
They could take his concerns seriously, address the issues he's raised, and really make an effort to present a more unified front.
So Wike's tough love could be the wake-up call they needed.
Exactly. They could prioritize fundraising, get their organization in order, and work to bridge that north-south divide within the party.
It wouldn't be easy, but it's possible.
It is. But let's be real, internal party reform is rarely smooth sailing.
Right. Are there any other scenarios that might be more likely runs where things don't go quite as Wike hopes?
There's definitely a chance that Wike's approach backfires. Instead of sparking positive change, his criticisms could alienate some party members, deepen those divisions, and lead to even more infighting.
So instead of uniting the PDP, he could end up pushing them further apart.
It's a risk. And if that happens, it would only benefit the ruling party. A divided opposition rarely poses a threat to those in power.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more divided they become, the less likely they are to regain power.
Precisely. And that's what Wike's warning against. He's saying if the PDP can't get its act together, it has no chance of challenging the ruling party.
So it's a make or break moment for the PDP.
Absolutely.
They're at a crossroads, and the decisions they make in response to Wike's challenge will determine their fate.
Their actions over the coming weeks and months will show whether they're willing to listen to Wike and make changes, or whether they'll stick to their current path and risk alienating a key figure like him.
And for Wike himself, this is a big gamble.
Oh, yeah.
He's put himself out there, made his criticisms public, and basically challenged the party leadership.
He's definitely taken a risk. If his gamble pays off and the PDP turns things around, he could come out looking like a hero, the man who's saved the party from itself.
But if it backfires and the PDP implodes, he could be blamed for pushing the party further apart and ruining their chances of success.
Exactly. It was a bold move, and only time will tell if it was the right one.
This whole saga has been so fascinating. It's given us a real look inside one of Nigeria's most prominent political parties and highlighted the difficulties of opposition politics in a complex democracy.
It's also raised some important questions about leadership, about strategy, the influence of money in politics, and that tricky balance between personal ambition and working together towards a common goal.
A lot to unpack, for sure.
Definitely.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the Wike PDP situation, I think the main takeaway is that we're seeing a turning point, not just for the PDP, but maybe for Nigerian politics as a whole.
Wike's accusations have revealed those deep divisions within the party and raised doubts about their ability to challenge the ruling party. The next few weeks and months will be critical in determining if the PDP can overcome these obstacles or if they'll fall apart and lose their chance to regain power. It's a story that's still unfolding, and we'll be watching closely to see what happens next.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another fascinating look into the world around us. Until then, stay curious.